I heard Rebekah speak, I think it was in Atlanta. And it was one of those presentations that stuck with me for a long time. I will paraphrase it, won't do it justice, but it was about the changing yet unchanging nature of the Camino. So when I think about Rebekah's experiences and her ability to communicate what the Camino is all about, I think it goes without saying that she is probably one of the best spokespeople for the Camino in all its ever-changing glory, frustrations, and ability to change the way we see and experience the world. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Rebekah.
Well, after all that, I think I might have to go out and walk on the water for a while to work that off. Well, I'm not sure exactly where to start, but I wanted I was looking at all these American Pilgrims on the screen here. I was a member of American Pilgrims long time ago, early 2000, when I first discovered that there were other pilgrims out there before there were ever chapters. And I made some friendships through American Pilgrims that are still some of the most primary people in my life, some of the most strong supporters of what we do here at my house and at Peaceable Projects. You can build lifetime, not just friendships, but alliances here to move you forward. American Pilgrims is an incredible organization, and watching it evolve as time goes on, I think you guys are sort of embodiment of something that's uniquely American, is the volunteer spirit. The people step up, people help, people see a need and they step in to do something. They don't just whine and complain and wait for the authorities to show up and fix it. No, they step up and do it. This is a really, not just American, but North American, I should say, because I see a lot of the same thing in Canada. But you guys, just hearing your accents as you talk is just wonderful. I just spent a day out on the Camino walking over by Castro Jerez with a Spanish friend and a friend from Wales. And to hear the American speech again, it's just, it comforts my heart. I do get homesick here. There's still, for a very long time, I was a sort of an exotic on the Camino because I was the only American within many miles. And then all the Americans showed up after 2010. And I'm just common old thing again. But now, after the COVID, all the pilgs are gone. So it's one change after another. I'll get into what's happening right this minute a little bit later, but the pilgrims are starting to show up again. We have a pilgrim in the house right now. So it's starting to come back alive. It's a great thing to see. It's spring is here. But anyway, Jeff asked me to read a chapter of Furnace Full of God, which is the book that came out last year about the life here in a Peaceable Kingdom in Moratinos on the Camino Francés. We have lived here for 15 years now, my husband and I, and we have a house in a little tiny village of 20 people. And we have a room for pilgrims here. And since the beginning of our life here, we have always welcomed pilgrims. We do not have an albergue. We don't have a business. This is just where we live and an extra room. This is the old-fashioned model of hospitality here on the Camino. And we don't intend to be anything that we're not. And we don't claim to be an albergue. And we very much don't want to be thought of as a business because we really kind of don't want to have inspectors and the tax man show up here. So we are totally voluntary here and donativo. Jeff asked me to read a chapter called Household Saints. It's a transition chapter in this book. It's how I was using it to move the narrative forward through time. So it's very episodic. It's just little persons who stopped here and stayed. This was in 2010, and it was a very busy year. It was a holy year, and we had lots and lots of pilgrims here. Life has changed since then. It's not nearly so heavy here at our house, but if you'll allow me to read this, I will. It's a little long, so be patient with me. He picked a big one. That was a spectacular summer with a parade of pilgrims and visitors. Tim the dog wandered away and was lost in the woods near Ladigos, miles from home. Hours later, he arrived on the doorstep. He found his way home on his own. Una dog spent afternoons over at the albergue project, keeping Bruno company. The Lord Jesus came and stayed with us. Rainer, a German pilgrim, assured us that he is this generation's embodiment of Jesus Christ. Rainer refused to take showers. He would only immerse himself, which required a bathtub. There are not very many bathtubs in the albergues on the way, so we gave thanks to God that we had one. I think his fellow pilgrims were thankful too. His laundry could almost rise up and walk. At dinner time, Rainer blessed the bread and the wine and broke the loaf and passed around bits to everyone. But after that, he slipped back to almost normal. He unloaded just a bit on Patrick. Patrick is my husband, whom we'd met before when he passed our way. After 30 years of marriage, Rainer's wife had left him. I don't understand how she could do that after all this time, he sighed. Patrick is always the soul of compassion. Imagine living for 30 years with Jesus Christ, he said. I'm amazed she stayed more than 30 minutes. Rainer was courageous. He didn't mind being laughed at. He blessed us all when he left, and I thanked him for it. You never know which of these people is an angel and which is just a guy. Far as I know, Rainer is the only incarnate Christ to stay with us, unless you count the Christ that lives in everyone and everything. Soon after, a professor of sacred geology stayed with us, a teacher at Naropa Institute in Colorado, a real New Ager. She traveled with dowsing rods and could tell by how they twisted in her hands where water flowed below our feet in underground streams, or where telluric energy flowed through the rocks. Our salon, where the pilgrims sleep, is a spot of great quiet and peace, she said. Out in the back garden, her dowsing rods bobbed above the same old well and vein of fresh water that an engineering firm had found back when we'd pondered installing geothermal heating here. Sonomi stayed too. Sonomi was a Japanese pilgrim who trained in Canada to be a hospitalera. She was tiny and shy and was overwhelmed by her first assignment at the gigantic pilgrim factory albergue in Ponferrada. I went and fetched her away. We told her it's okay, not everyone is cut out for hosting pilgrims. She sat quietly and watched how we do things at the Peaceable. She got bored, I think. After a couple of days, she took the train back to Ponferrada and her post there and finished it out like a champ. I rescued another hospitalera that summer from a little albergue in a remote Galician village. Her fellow host was abusive, she said, insulting and arrogant and bossy. I'd suffered a similar fate myself the year before at that same albergue, so I went and fetched her away too. The rescuee turned out to be suffering all kinds of family trauma back at home in Ontario. Spending her holidays caring for strangers wasn't a great idea just then. She was a character. She looked into my past lives one afternoon and discovered why I am so deeply attached to this place. It seems that I once was a monk, brought up in a local village and educated at the great Benedictine monastery that once reigned over Sahagún. Having lived and died in the neighborhood 600 years ago, it's no wonder I was drawn back here, she said. What the hell, I said, why not? It would also explain why I like going to church. We had the rota of guitarists set to play through the summer. I posted it on the church door like Martin Luther. For the Holy Year, the diocese agreed to open all the Camino churches throughout the summer to pay a nominal amount to each village to open up and hang around so the multitude of pilgrims could stop inside and pray. Don Santiago, our priest, made up the schedule starting in July, a day each week for each household. The hours were well outside the times when most pilgrims passed through town, but then the program was set up by people who'd never met a real pilgrim. There's no arguing with priests, everyone agreed. We took our day each week, sitting at the little desk in the entryway, greeting the passers-by, stamping pilgrim credentials with a Moratino seal that Patrick designed. We brought a little boombox down with us and played Gregorian chants in the background. The neighbors came in and sat in the cool shade. Little Gillen and Olaya came. We played hangman, and they coached me on past tense verbs and laughed at the awful things I do to Spanish. They're brother and sister. They live in Vitoria, in the Basque Country. They come to Moratinos each summer. They wandered the town with several cousins, watched over by everyone. We have watched them grow up. They study English at school, but speak Spanish at home and Basque. There are several Basque speakers in our town. Olaya and Gillen's great uncles left town years ago to find work in Vitoria and Bilbao. They married Basque women and raised their kids with both languages. We're not the only Spanish as second language speakers here. Gillen and Olaya kept me company at the church. Late one morning, Angela arrived and pulled a newborn kitten from her handbag to show the children. It made an awful racket. It was almost closing time anyway, so I locked up the church with the 2 huge keys and headed down to Angela's house to see the rest of the litter. The babies were finger-sized, incredibly small and wiggly. Their mother wasn't far past kittenhood herself. She'd made a nest in the straw in the tractor shed, beneath the tines of the hay rake. We all squeezed into the space and oohed and awed over the catlings. Gillen counted and sorted the babies by color, and then reattached them to their mother in the proper order. A shaft of sunlight lit up the scene like a Caravaggio. I could feel the sharp tines of the rake just overhead, way too near our eyes and ears. I cringed a little bit. No one else gave it any thought. Farmers waste so little time on fear. Sunflowers bloom in July, great wide fields of smiling yellow faces. Patrick says they are vulgar and gaudy. They bloom just in time for our wedding anniversary, so we always have a million reminders. July is my favorite month, the peak of the year. The night sky is full of falling stars. Villages throw parties to celebrate their patron saints. That year, pilgrims came and came and came. Amado came, a Redemptorist priest from the Philippines. He was small and wiry and very holy. He walked barefoot for peace. He stayed up late with me and sat quietly meditating, 40 minutes without a word. No other pilgrim ever did that. I went to one of Fred's guitar concerts in Fromista one evening and brought home 2 young nuns. Their gray habits were wrinkled and spotted, and one of them had a terrible cold. They spoke some English, so we managed well. They were French, from a relatively new contemplative order that was falling on hard times. One of the 20 sisters who lived there, they were the youngest and the most fit. They were chosen to make the pilgrimage to Santiago for the sake of the entire convent. They had almost no money. Until they started walking, neither of them had been outside the convent walls for the previous 8 years. They'd set out from their front gate, expecting to find accommodations at the nunneries and churches along the way. They quickly learned different. We stop at the convent, introduce ourselves, tell them we're pilgrims. The sisters are always happy to see us, Sor Miriam said. They sit us down, they give us cakes and tea. They show us the empty beds in the novitiate wing and ask us to pray for them because they have no younger sisters joining. But when we ask if we can stay with them that night, they always say no. Hospitality is not part of the ministry of their order. They send us to the pilgrim albergue. We feel like Our Lady and Saint Joseph. No room at the inn, said Sor Anna. Or maybe the Holy Family on the way to Egypt. We had one woman at Mass in Nájera invite us to stay at her house, but then when we arrived, her husband closed the door in our faces. It was dark already. We'd given up our beds at the albergue. That place was full of young men, bicyclists. They wear the most extraordinary outfits, Anna said. We felt like maybe we shouldn't sleep there with them. They'd been drinking. We slept outside. We slept in a vineyard. It was all we could do at the end. We did not make such a good choice. I think that's when I caught this cold. They stayed for 3 days. We asked them to bless our dinner, and they sang a beautiful little psalm. Tim loved them. Tim is the dog. Their laundry hung in strange shapes on the line, and they took one another's photos wearing our African caftan robes while their habits dried. They were funny and bright and good cooks, too. It was hard to say goodbye. The holiest people we met that summer weren't religious at all, but I call them the Trinity. One was a 50-something woman from Slovakia, a teacher of languages. She spoke 5 or 6 fluently, and happily one was English. Her name was Norma. Her skin was pale, her eyes were dark circles under bushy brows. She was unremarkable, but for her companions. Karsten and Eric were slender, young, and blonde, 2 20-year-old youths from Germany, well off and well-spoken. They were doing the Camino for sport, they said, to keep in shape over summer for their school year athletic pursuits. They'd met Norma at a spring outside Burgos, where she was giving herself a vitamin injection. Eric, a keen vegetarian, had asked about her combinations of nutrients. The shots kept her going, she said. Norma was doing the Camino that summer because she was running out of time. Cancer in her lymph nodes had gone to her brain, inoperable. But she still could walk just fine, she said. If she was going to make the way, it was now or never. Karsten and Eric thought that was amazing. They walked with her to the next town and checked in at the Pilgrim shelter. Someone told the manager that evening that Norma was in the dormitory shooting up heroin. The hospitalero threw her out. Karsten and Eric shouted out her defense, but the man wouldn't hear it. So they gathered up their things and they left too. The 3 of them slept that night on the church porch and walked together from then on. The boys took turns walking ahead and behind. They didn't hover, but they kept Norma in sight. They scouted water fountains and good places to stay. And that's how they came to the Peaceable, Karsten said. He'd read about us in his Paderborn Pilgrim Guide. We don't list ourselves in guides, but the guy who makes up the Paderborn Guide is a friend, and that's how it works. That's how it worked for Norma. My blue-eyed angels, she called the boys, sent from heaven. And that's how it worked for Eric. This would have been another achievement, a nice long-distance hike, some beers, maybe a girlfriend. But with Norma, we have meaning. She tells us many things we never heard of. We help her, so we have a purpose. In an antique shop, I found a little image of St. James, 18th century from France, carved from pearwood by some amateur whittler. It was just a little cartoony, just right for our church, so I bought it. I asked Segandino, the carpenter, to make a wall plinth for it, so we could put him up in front of the church where pilgrims could see him. We have a fine statue of San Roque, a pilgrim saint, proof against plagues, but even he even has a miracle story attached. But what's a church along the Santiago Trail without a Santiago inside? No one could find a reason why not. Maribel arranged to have him blessed and installed in August, part of the town fiesta mass. Segandino set to work. On our next day of church duty, I climbed up the ladder and plucked the silver crown off the Virgin Mary's head. I took a soft cloth and some polish and worked it over, rubbing hard to remove the tarnish of many years. I found out the crown wasn't silver at all. It was just some soft pot metal, molded and soldered and battered about. Still, someone had put their heart and their savings into that, perhaps a thank you for answered prayer. Had it been silver, the wicked priest in the 1920s would have sold that too. Like a lot of Spanish Virgin statues, this one has a spike growing out of her head, installed just for such a crown. But even with jewels, this Blessed Mother is a plain country girl. Her smile is a little too wide, her eyes are too close together. She's not a holy queen of heaven. She's one of us.
Mm.
That is the chapter of the book. It's episodic. It kind of carries you through the month and into August when things started to happen. So that is what it was like here in 2010. Things have changed a bit since then. I would like, if you guys had some questions, if you wanted to put them in the chat, or have somebody help me out with paying attention to all these different faces and questions and things. Someone asked me if we're seeing pilgrims now from the EU or the USA. I haven't seen an American pilgrim for probably a year, probably since a year ago. I've only seen mostly French, and we've had some men from Colombia in the last month who live here in Spain, who are walking from one place of work to another. Not all the people who stay here are pilgrims, but the Pilgrim Trail is a useful place for people who are migrant workers to move from one place to the next and have an affordable place to stay. So if you are a pilgrim here and you see someone who's wearing jeans and carrying something that's not a backpack, don't be too judgmental, as the pilgrimage and the Pilgrim Trail is here for a lot of people, and not just people who have a pilgrim credential. And we try to treat everybody with dignity. Let's see, there's the Americans. I've heard there are Americans around, but I was the only American I saw. I walked in August when things opened up a little bit. I met one other American who was a teacher in Valencia, and she was a very interesting girl. But we were back to being rarities again. It was kind of fun. And how do people find us? We don't advertise. We don't tell people we're here. We go by word of mouth. We only have maximum 4 or 5 beds here, so we don't want to be overwhelmed every day either. And we have a hostel here in our town and an albergue, and those people make their living here, and we don't want to take their living from them. So most of the time, the people who stop at the albergue or at the hostel first, and then they get to the albergue, if they don't have enough money, they send them on to us. So we get the people who either don't want to spend money or don't have any money. And often that's the cream of the crop, I find. And we are paid back in different kind of currency. And it's not about money here. I think we operate in a different economy. The Paderborn Guide was a pilgrim guide that was produced by the Paderborn Pilgrim Association in Germany. They had their own for many years, very, very good guide. And this is the same association that runs the Pilgrim Albergue in Pamplona along the river. Very fine place. Let's see what else people are asking me.
This is Vince. I was going to ask you not to forecast the future, but are there any official government predictions on when vaccines will be widely available in Spain?
Well, there's the latest was said by somebody official is that they'll be up to 70%, which is supposedly the herd immunity number by the end of summer.
Super.
And so that's encouraging, although my husband just turned 80 years old and we haven't not heard a word about him being vaccinated. So out here on the perimeter, we live in a very rural area. I think we are last in line because we are so safe. We are so isolated that we're not considered a huge risk out here. So that's
Thank you for that info.
Yeah, I hope I have a ticket bought to go back to the US to visit my family in the last part of September. I'm hoping that I'm able to travel by then. Well, there are people crossing the border now. The French guys who are stopping here now came over the border in Samport. They didn't come from Roncesvalles. Someone has asked me, when will Roncesvalles open again? Nobody can say, because they are totally fed by the border. But the people coming from Samport onto the Camino Aragonés are crossing without any question and no problem. So I don't know. I also talked to some pilgrims who came over from France from at Irun. So, and without any trouble, people were being stopped going into France, but coming over from France, no question. So go figure.
Okay.
Interesting
Well,
questions.
some of us in the USA are hoping that maybe by September we could visit Spain. We'll just have to wait and see.
Well, we'd be glad to see you. Although I'll be running back to the US myself. I have not seen my granddaughter for more than a year.
Yeah.
And I'm getting a little anxious here. I do have a spiritual upbringing. Someone asking me that. I was raised by good American fundamentalists. I'm myself a Benedictine sister. I took my first vows this year. So I've kind of gone back to the more structured and historic church, but I still am very much a Christian. There's not a problem with the French people coming over the border, not that I've seen. We are careful. We do our social distancing. Our house is set up so we have the distance, and we're doing all right. We had, when the lockdown first happened, we did have the Guardia Civil here a couple of different times. And they were pretty hard on one of our pilgrims who was here. But after that first big lockdown, things have loosened up remarkably for pilgrims. And I don't think most people consider them a big threat. And I think a lot of the Guardia really don't want to be bothered with them because they're not homeless, they're not violent, they're not criminals, and they're on the move. And as long as they keep moving and they move out of their district, then they don't have to bother with them. So it's...
Oh, Bill Arts has a hand raised.
Thanks, Vince. Rebekah, I know you do a lot of good work through Peaceable Projects. Mm-hmm. And my question is, understanding that the current situation is in flux, where do you anticipate will be the greatest challenges or problems for donativos once things open up again? And where can American Pilgrims help?
Ooh, that's a prime question. I take care of the hospitality of the FIX, the Fraternidad Internacional del Camino de Santiago. It's an activist group here in Spain. And we run an albergue, and we do our very best to keep the donativo principle alive and thriving. Right now, this coming week, Monday, Tuesday, we're doing our first road trip, and there's a lot of kind of exciting things being done. We're rethinking a lot of things about the model of what is a hospitalero, what is donativo. So you'll probably hear something from us within the next month or so. Especially because this shakedown that's happening right now with the donativo places, they are looking at what they are, especially municipals are looking at, what is this place? Why are we here? Are we creating competition for our local businesses that's unfair? Because they are filing suit against some of the donativos, saying that they're taking away custom and that the city is competing with them for money. And there are some people that seem to be actively trying to shut down donativos. And we're working with that and thinking about that. What can we do to make them realize that we were here first? The donativo is what gave birth to the hostels and this place. But what can we do? One of the other things we're dealing with now is, especially on Tuesday, we're visiting a big pilgrim albergue with a lot of history. And the municipal people have said, we want new management here, because the locals are trying to shut them down because one way they're doing it is they're changing the codes, the building codes. And so we used to pack people in there, 80, 90 people in a big room with 4 or 5 bathrooms. It just doesn't work. It never did work. It's inhumane. But they're saying, well, we don't need 4 bathrooms. We need 16. How can an albergue that runs on donations afford to completely replumb? So we may be seeing need for that kind of money to replumb and rewire and bring a lot of the old places up to code so they can compete or even just stay open. Hopefully stay open. A lot of them some of the people we've talked to are just going to give up and not open again and not fight it. So we may be fighting a losing battle here. But this is kind of a hobby horse for me. It's not always interesting to everybody to talk about albergues and hospitality. So I don't want to bore people with these details. But I think some of the needs that we're going to see in the near future is infrastructure like this. So that's just to answer your question.
Okay,
Okay,
then
thank
one
you.
from
Thanks.
Linnea Henderson asking if the college astronomy class you mentioned, I think in your book, was the one taught by Doc Losh at the University of Michigan.
No, that was University of Pittsburgh.
I'm sorry.
Okay, okay. Thank you.
Okay.
I
Jim
studied
Martin,
architecture at Michigan, but I studied astronomy in Pittsburgh.
Jim Martin in Atlanta is asking if the need for the ditch pigs has declined this year, probably because of the reduced pilgrims.
Well, that's a good question too. Yeah, the Ditch Pigs is a volunteer team that we take out every November to pick up trash along about 100 kilometers of carefully chosen Camino. With the last group I took out in last November, we did not lose our motivation and our forward movement. There were 4 of us. 3 of us were the Marist priests from Sahagún, from the albergue there. And we cleaned up from Calzadilla de la Cuesa all the way to Reliegos, pretty remote part of the world, but we found plenty of trash. There's not nearly as much because there's not pilgrims throwing it on the ground. But I was out today in another piece of land that we usually clean up. It was quite clean, but we didn't get to some of the areas that are traditionally really dirty. So one of the great things about having pilgrims on the ground is they tell us when they see a problem, and then we can go there and hit that area later on. We don't have the pilgrims reporting now. So probably next year or this year, if we do it again, we will go down to a place that we haven't been for a while, probably the Camino de Madrid, south of here, and walk up the Camino de Madrid and do the waymarking as well, because no one has waymarked there for several years. And I love the Camino de Madrid, and I really try to promote it as much as I can. And you don't know where you're going, it's not a good Camino. So anyway, I don't know if that helps you, but yeah, we're still out there, and the need is still there because it's not just pilgrims throwing the trash on the ground. It's a lot of local volunteers.
And Rebekah, what's the word in Santiago? I mean, you know, I know you know lots of folks, and it being a holy year, and what's the word there?
Well, they're still pretty locked down. They keep having to lock down. They keep having outbreaks there. Right this minute, tomorrow or Monday, things are going to loosen up again a bit. People are out in the terraces. This is also speaking from where I am now. You can have your drinks and your tapas out in the terrace or in the garden in the open air. So, but hopefully, and the announcement is that starting on Monday, you can go inside the bar again in 30% capacity. But many places are not opening at all. They're just hanging on and waiting till things go back to normal. And if they ever open again, we don't know. We won't know that until it starts happening. I was telling someone just this very day that the first month or so, when the borders open up and people are allowed to walk, it's going to be a real Leo. It's going to be crazy because no one can say what's open, what's available. And there might be a whole lot of people trying to fit into a very little space. And we might just go back to the old way where you get lucky, you have a bed. If not, you sleep out in the haystack. And I think that might be really good for some of us. Let's see.
I know there was one question, Gene McCullough, about, he gets questions as American Pilgrims webmaster about, is the Camino open? He said he has an answer, but he would like to hear yours.
Oh yeah, Jean is a great treasure. Anybody who's a web guy is a treasure. But is the Camino open? And you don't want to hear my answer to that. That's so glib. The Camino is not a gas station. It doesn't open in glib. You just it's always open. If you can, I mean, I can walk the Camino today. I can walk to Santiago in a couple of weeks. It's open. It's there. It's just that's a silly question.
No, Rebecca, the next sentence in my question was, I know the Camino is not a thing.
Yeah.
And so it's a nonsensical question. And so I have to phrase an answer that is around the nonsensical question. So given that, would you have a comment?
It's not open for people who from outside of Spain. Yeah.
That's the kind of thing that I want. And that's the essence of what I answer.
Yeah, it's not legally open. People are coming over the borders and people are moving about. And the police are not stopping them, but it's a matter of, are you going to take on the violation of international borders if that's what you want to do?
Okay, I'm really glad. I'm very glad to hear you speak those words, because it will give me, I'll say, more ammunition to answer.
Yeah. Drop me.
I won't quote you, but
yeah, but I'd like to comment on that this conversation here is that if someone is brand new to our organization and they're asking about, is the Camino open? They may be truly curious and not understand the level of intimacy that most of us have had with the Camino, or you've lived on the Camino for 15 years and host people. So I would be a little bit, I'd be a little cautious in terms of how I would answer that question to someone, because they may not be there. They may be asking it in the spirit of curiosity.
my answer runs to a half a page. So I absolutely understand your concern.
Yeah,
Well,
I hear you.
it's
I hear
my-
you too.
my-
I think I do hear you, but I know that the people here in this room are pretty hardcore and they've been around the block. We try to be compassionate to beginner people and be kind. I'm not always noted for my compassionate kindness. I think I love them, and I love new people and new beginners. And I think most people who they're grown-ups. They can take it.
So
I
we've
look at
got-
it as,
Well, Sharon wants to say something, and we're getting toward the end. So
just, I think that there's an American perspective that, okay, so I buy the ticket, like I buy a ticket to Disneyland. And I, if I get, is the Camino open? I go, yeah, just be sure that you buy the E ticket or the B ticket, and that starts a conversation, because clearly they don't understand that there's no beginning, there's no end. It's an intentional journey that you're on. And so I take it as an opening for the larger conversation about Camino, instead of, because it's always open. It's because it's not Disneyland. I think that's an American thing.
Lisa Morales has her hand open. I would just comment, it may be open, but it's not really available to a novice.
Well, I want to piggyback on that. That I think it's those of us in this room are the ones responsible for sharing that message. And, I think we should have front and center on our website exactly what was just said, that the Camino is not a thing, and that in the spirit of the Camino, we need to be acting in everyone's best interest right now, not what you want to do, but what's best for greater good. And that is all of our responsibility as chapter leaders to get that word out there, because I think it is a uniquely American, and Rebekah has said this many times, so I'll steal your words about what pilgrims are demanding, as opposed, tourists are demanding, and that pilgrims are grateful. That we can help to change that mindset right from the get-go, the minute they come to our website or our Facebook page, that this Camino is a gift to us and to the world. And it's not for us to demand because we took the time off, or we've been waiting, or we want to do this now because of X, Y, and Z. And that's the greater message of the entire Camino, right from minute one. So that would be there doesn't need to be a half a page answer to, is it open? That sharing from the very start about what this really is and how it can affect all of us, from the people on the Camino. I keep hearing, oh, but they need our money. Then send them the money. You don't need to go over there and, bother these people. Send them the dang money. And so I think that's all of our responsibility.
Yeah, Lisa, that's wonderful. It's an excellent point you make. One thing I want to make clear, though, to North Americans, is the Camino does not belong to Spain, and the Camino does not belong to Europe. The Camino belongs to all of us. We are pilgrims, and it's a World Heritage Site. And this is why I try to get people more involved in activism on the Camino, to save the historic places and to prevent some incursions on the Camino. And Americans and South Americans and people from all over the world can be involved in this. It's not a Spanish thing. It's our Camino, and we are the Camino. So don't hesitate to become a part of things that preserve and respect the Camino, because it's not a national thing. It's international. It's interhuman. It's ours, and we are it. So it's sort of the flip side of what you're saying is, so we need to be part of the group that takes care of it and preserves it for the future.
And Rebekah, what a great way to end your presentation. And I just want to thank you on behalf of all the chapter coordinators out here for taking your time and your commitment and your compassion and your dedication to the Camino. I loved your book. I think, and I picked that chapter randomly, but when I read it, it spoke to me because we've all met those folks on the Camino. And I thought, what a great way in a year that's been, tough for everybody, is a way to reconnect with that feeling and those relationships and those experiences of why we do the Camino. So again, thank you so much for being with us today.
Well, thank you guys for giving me a bully pulpit, and God bless America.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you so much. So I am on a call when we do this, when we want to clap. So everybody give Rebekah some jazz hands.
Yeah.
Okay, wonderful.
Hey, God bless you, Rebekah. Thank you for what you do.
Bye-bye.
So we've got a couple, before we end, I wanted to give people the chance for a couple announcements. Dave Cook, you want to talk about the upcoming event in Notre Dame?
Great.
Where's Dave?
Dave Cook.
Here you are. You got to unmute yourself, Dave.
Okay, here I go. The chapter coordinators of the area around Indiana have been meeting, and we are actively planning and cautiously optimistic that the weekend of St. James from the July 23rd to the 26th is going to happen. St. Mary's College has just been great to work with. We do not have to sign any contract commitments until late April, I believe. So we'll have registration forms. We're just anticipating that this is going to happen, given the condition of the vaccine situation. So registration would be opened early May. That's the latest word. So watch for that and come on over.
Thank you, Dave. Bill, you want to talk about an upcoming chapter coordinator event?
Sure. I think our next Zoom event is going to be the coordinator workshop, which is set for Saturday. I believe it opens at 9:30 and it'll probably run till about 1 o'clock in the afternoon Central. We have a whole slew of folks that are going to present and talk about various topics, including best practices, sustaining and building a community, and kind of what's going on right now with the Camino in terms of an update, infrastructure, and Hospice Hero program. So those are kind of the things. We have actually a fun, hopefully fun event and also informative event. So look forward to seeing everyone there in a few weeks.
So what Saturday is that? Not this Saturday. I'm not ready.
The 27th. The
Thank
27th.
you.
The last Saturday of the month.
And I'll just throw out there on Monday, the 15th, I'm doing the Unpacking Your Camino, how to integrate your Camino into everyday life on the Boston Zoom. It's on the national calendar.
Excellent. Thanks, Lisa. Anybody else? Any announcements you want to share with your fellow coordinators? Linda, I'll call on you because you're doing some things, kind of getting out of the pandemic world. I know you've got a pop-up tomorrow, don't you?
Yes, we've cautiously gathered for a number of Sunday hikes. We all wear face masks. Everybody's been awesome. Everyone's respected it. We're out in the fresh air, and the weather in Houston is so beautiful for hikes. And we get a pretty good group of people. A lot of our past members are there, but we also have some future pilgrims that join us. So it's kind of fun to walk along with them and let them ask us questions, and we get to know them. So that is the beginning of us starting to get back together a little bit. It's been a weird, long year, and I miss everybody. I miss the Camino. So.
Jeff, this is Vince. I'd like to make a couple of comments. I would
Sure.
really encourage everyone to check out the calendar on the American Pilgrims website to see what events and Zoom events that other chapters are having. There's some really interesting things out there. And maybe Mike, and I hate to put you on the spot, Mike Gardner, do you want to say a word or two about what Charlotte is hoping to do in April? You may have dropped.
I had to unmute myself. I do not right now. More information to follow only once we get a verification, then we can.
We're hoping to have a speaker that would be of interest to widely.
Vince, Gene McCullough, I've got a remark. The Colorado Front Range chapter, about 2 months ago, we had a trivia contest, which we shamelessly stole the idea from the Texas Gulf Coast chapter. I have to remark that. But we invited a half a dozen other chapters, typically some of the smaller chapters, to join us. And indeed, we had some people from all over the country. That's one thing about these virtual events. There's absolutely no limit. As a matter of fact, we had Tom Friesen from Canada was with us, and a friend of Roseanne and myself from England joined us as well. So if you're doing something virtual, think about getting some other chapters involved.
And that's a great endorsement of what we're trying to do right here. So thank you for that, Gene.
Hey, Jeff, I've got
Yes,
one
Jim.
real quick, if you've got a moment.
Sure.
Now, kind of following on what Gene said, I did not put this on the national calendar because I wasn't sure how well it was going to work. It was our first try at it. Our chapter did a Spanish food cooking Zoom a few weeks back, and it was a lot of fun. Some people cooked along with us. Some people just, watched the deal. We had about 25 or 22, 25, somewhere in there, because some people started and some people left along the way. But if you're looking for something fun to do and engage your group and keep them kind of oh, hey, these people do still exist. That was a really fun event. We're going to do another one. And the next one I do, I will put on the national calendar because it did work. And if
Great.
anybody's got questions, I posted some of the info on Facebook before, or you can feel free to, email our chapter at Atlanta at American Pilgrims. We're always happy to help folks.
Great. Benny Beesman has a raised hand.
Yes.
Yes, I am Benny from the Puget Sound chapter in Washington. We recently started a Camino book club, which appears to be very good idea because we have 25 people attending those Zoom book club meetings. Maybe that's a good idea.
Thanks.
Yeah. And, one of the things I know folks are kind of trying to figure out how do you do this in, pandemic world. And, there's a lot of good ideas out there. So please, reach out to one another, right? Someone's probably done it already. So I think Linda and Jean, if you want to try a trivia contest, go to the folks who've done it. More than willing. I'll speak for you both. You're probably more than willing to share.
And just to interject, that this is exactly going to be one of the sessions at the workshop, talking about event ideas and how to best utilize and leverage Zoom. So those both are on the agenda for the workshop. So just a little
all
teaser.
coming together.
Yep.
All right. Well, I appreciate everybody being here. We're just like you all. Lily, I'll get you just a second. We're exploring and we're experimenting, and people vote with their feet. So when we have 50 people registered, that says, we're doing something that people want. So we're going to continue. Lily, you got the last word.
Thank you. We started a book club in the Old Pueblo chapter as well. We had our first one in February, and we did Rebirth was the book that we did. And I wanted to ask, I'm sorry, I didn't quite get the name of the gentleman who said that they have a book club going, and I just wanted some recommendations for books that you've already done with your book club.
Well, I'm not in charge of the book club thing going on here, but I can hook you up with the people who are running it here. Because
okay.
I know they have planned already the next 3 or 4 months. So they pick one book, and like last month they had somebody who wrote the book and who was on the Zoom meeting too, so they could ask questions to the writer and everything. So I'll who was asking this question here?
Lily Blitzer from the Old Pueblo chapter in Tucson.
Okay.
Yeah.
Jacksonville just did a book club, and we did the book I'll Push You, and we also encourage our members to read the book, listen to the audio, but also watch the movie. Phenomenal. Everybody loved it. I mean, it was magnificent. So that is a really good book to do.
We started a movie club here too, and we're going to be watching that movie this month, I'll Push You.
Nice.
As a group. We've done one movie before this, The Way. We started off with that one, and I'll Push You is our next. It was a great success, and it was a lot of fun.
So I saw Linnea had her hand raised, but it is 1 o'clock. So if people want to jump off, you're certainly free to. Yes, Linnea.
Okay, we've had a book club too. We're on our 3rd or 4th book, and for each one, we've been really lucky. I contacted the authors of the books, and we've had like Beth Jacino, we had Chris Lowney. Oftentimes, the book club has gone on more than one session because people got so interested in discussing the book. So anyway, I think it's been a great thing. People are suggesting the books. I'll be talking about this.
Ooh. Okay. Well, everyone, enjoy your Saturday. It was great to see everybody, and we'll see you at an upcoming Zoom session. And someday we'll see each other in person.
Great events, Jeff. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye, back. Bye, Rebecca.
Thank you. That was awesome. Have a good one.
Bye.
Bye, David Cook.